Today we're doing a Q&A about eggs. I think I got more than 80 questions from you guys. Luckily there was a good bit of overlap, so although I won't answer all 80, I'll answer a lot. If you want to jump to a particular topic, check the timestamps in the description below. Okay, so first let's address buying eggs. I got a few questions from Lemon Party and Jeremy. What eggs should you buy? Organic, cage-free, pasture-raised? So all of those feel-good words don't necessarily guarantee anything about the taste. Here's what I have in the fridge right now. This happened to be organic and pasture-raised, but you know, every store I have a different brand that I like. So at Wegmans, these are the ones I like, but the ones I like from Whole Foods aren't organic and they taste great. What I suggest you do is each time you buy eggs, try a different brand and see how the yolk is. That's really how you judge the quality of the egg. The bigger and the richer color the yolk, the closer it is to orange than to pale yellow, the better the egg and the better it will taste. So just try them and see which brand is right for you. It is kind of true in my experience that the more expensive eggs do often taste better. They often have better yolks. Now about the size, I usually buy large or extra large, but that does not really mean anything. Here's what those terms mean. In order for eggs to be labeled as large, on average, an egg in that carton has to be 57 grams or larger. So it is typical, especially for more expensive eggs, to say large on the box, but to have most of the eggs be extra large. So don't get too attached to what that size says. If you want to know what your eggs actually are, you have to weigh them. And another interesting question is about freshness. How do you know how fresh they are? Because for some dishes, basically anything you need to peel, hard-boiled, soft-boiled, you want eggs that are not too fresh. And for poaching, you want eggs that are fresh. And how do you know how fresh your eggs are? So on the carton, you'll usually see an expiration date. But of course, like my expiration date, for example, is November 13th. Underneath the expiration date, there are some mysterious numbers. Some numbers follow the letter P. That's the plant where the eggs were produced. And then in the end, you'll see a 3-digit number. For me, it's 279. And that can be converted into a production date using a table. I'll link to the table in the description below. But 279 converts to October 5th. It's, I think, which day of the year it is. It's 279th day of the year. So now that we talked about buying, let's talk about the most popular question, which is how do you peel hard-boiled eggs? So here's the deal about peeling. Nothing is ever foolproof. I know everybody wants to tell you, oh, they have a totally foolproof way. It's foolproof given their eggs, given their conditions. You find some sort of breed of chicken that, you know, produces very unpeelable eggs, so the eggs are too fresh or whatever, and that might not work. That being said, you can tremendously increase your chance of peeling the egg successfully if you follow these principles. So the first one is never ever to start in cold water. The eggs need a temperature shock to help their peel come off easily later on. So either start in boiling water or steam your eggs. In my hard-boiled video that I'll link in the description below, I actually use a combination of both. I start steaming and then add the rest of the water. People will usually rave about pressure-cooked eggs or eggs cooked in the Instant Pot. The reason they work, it has nothing to do with pressure, it's actually steaming. Yes, steaming helps the eggs peel. I prefer not to do them in a pressure cooker because I find it's tricky to catch an absolute perfect time when the egg is done when the pot is pressurized. Another confusing thing about peeling eggs is freshness. So I know that you've been told not to cook fresh eggs if you have chickens in your yard. Then yes, you might have that problem. If the eggs were just laid, they will not peel well. But if you're buying them in the store, they're never that fresh, you know. So I don't usually worry too much about waiting for a very specific amount of time to cook my eggs. I just buy them and If I want a hard-boiled egg, I hard-boil it. And if you start in boiling water and use my next trick of peeling them underwater, you're going to be fine. So peeling underwater is crucial. I don't think there's anything that helps as much as peeling underwater, not peeling in the air. Now, if your egg is really stuck and nothing is working, you can always just scoop it out with a spoon. How well that will work will depend on the exact shape and thickness of your spoon. I mean, some spoons are more curvy, some less, some are thicker, some less. So if your spoons are just not well suited for this, you can buy a little thingy on Amazon. They're like little tools for peeling eggs that are very slim and slide right between the shell and that egg white and help you peel. Yes, they do work, they're inexpensive, and if your spoons don't work, try that. All right, so that's pretty much all there is about peeling, and way more precise instructions are in the video that I will link to below. Now let's talk about doneness. To me, doneness is way more important than peeling. I mean, in the worst case, you'll scoop that egg out. It won't be smooth, but you'll get it out. But if your egg is overcooked and has that chalky, pale yolk, especially with that horrendous green ring around it, that's awful. So to produce eggs that are cooked to the correct temperature, by the way, it is hard because you can't just look inside the egg, right? So to do that, it's very important to avoid cooking methods that let the water just cool off. There are lots of those cooking methods. Oh, simmer your eggs for 3 minutes and then turn off the pot and let the water gradually cool off. That doesn't mean they sometimes don't work. They do work. Assuming you have a particular pot, you're cooking a particular number of eggs in a particular amount of water. But say you change that, and instead of cooking 2 eggs in 1 quart of water, you're now cooking 6 eggs in 3 quarts of water. Well, the 3 quarts of water will cool off way slower than 1 quart of water. And then the doneness of your eggs will be very different. If your pot is different, amount of water is different, number of eggs are different, that will all change how much cooking happens during the cool-off period. So I don't like those cooking methods. I like very precise timing. And here's the biggest thing, which for some reason I have never ever heard any cookbook mention, which is crucial, is that you have to know the true size of your eggs, right? We're relying on timing. Well, this timing is for particular size of an egg. And the carton, whatever the carton says, large, extra large, is meaningless. So I strongly suggest you weigh your eggs to find out what size are they really and use the timing for that size. Do I still weigh my eggs? No. I weighed them for a few weeks about 10 years ago when I was figuring all this out, and now I have some intuition. So I have, like, if I look at an egg, I can tell you roughly how many grams that's going to be. Well, actually, let's find out how accurate I am. I'd say this is a 63-gram egg. Let's see what it is. It is 60. All right, close enough. Now, another hard-boiled egg question was about the pinprick, pricking the dull end of the egg with like a thumbtack. Yes, it does work. It accomplishes 2 things. It helps the eggs not crack when you lower them into the water, and it helps the egg fill the shell entirely so that you don't have that little bump in its bottom, that little pocket of air. I personally don't do that, and here's why. It's a little bit of work to poke every single egg with that thumbtack, and that little bump in the egg, in egg white, doesn't bother me at all. So it's not a perfectly oval egg. Who cares? I don't care. If you care, then you should do that thumbtack. Now, as far as cracking goes, I lower my eggs into the water 1 at a time, and if any of them crack, it's usually the first one. And if 1 egg out of, say, 6 or 8 eggs cracks, it's not a biggie. It's still perfectly edible. It's just cracked. So to me, this is not a big deal, but I know for some cooks, it is a big deal. So if you're wondering if it works, yes, it does work. Now, how do you store the hard-boiled or soft-boiled eggs? I store them already peeled. It is way easier to peel them after you cook them. Immediately shock them in cold water, give them 5 minutes and peel. They'll peel way better this way than if you cool them, put them in the fridge and try to peel them the next day. So I peel them, put them in a container and store them for up to 5 days. And by the way, for soft-boiled eggs, it's basically all the same principles apply, but the timing is shorter. And for soft-boiled eggs, I usually steam the whole way. Steaming is great for peeling. The only downside is that the white comes out a little bit more rubbery if you go all the way to hard-boiled stage. But if you want soft-boiled where the yolk is liquid, then steaming is fantastic. Oh yeah, how do you rewarm them? What if you have a soft-boiled egg and you want to warm it up? Well, just put it into hot water, already peeled. Put that egg into hot water for maybe 15 minutes, and then it's as good as new. Okay. So I think we have discussed hard and soft boiled to death. I'll link to the videos for them below. Let's talk about sunny side up. Here's a question from the okra. How do you avoid the top of your sunny side up eggs from being raw and undercooked? Okay, so here's how I do my sunny side up eggs. I cook them on low heat, covered. This way the egg creates a little bit of steam in the pan, the lid traps that steam, and the top of the egg cooks as well as the bottom of the egg. And you want very gentle heat so that the bottom does not overcook. Another option, or you can use it together with covering, is in the end pop that egg under the broiler for about 20-30 seconds, just until that top is set. So that's how you produce nice sunny side up eggs. Next question is about poached eggs. There are a couple of questions from Yam Marcos Garcia and Philip Duarte. So how do you make solid whites with runny yolks, and do you need vinegar? So let's first talk about vinegar. Yes, vinegar helps the egg white coagulate. But I don't use it because in my experiments I found out that in order for vinegar to be truly effective, you need a lot of it. I mean, really a lot, to the point that I can taste the difference in the eggs. No, they don't taste sour, they taste chalky. I'm not exactly sure why, but my guess is because the pH of eggs and vinegar are kind of opposite. Vinegar is acidic, and an egg is a base, so something weird happens to the egg where it tastes a little chalky. I don't like that, and so I don't use vinegar. I have a way better solution to the egg from spreading out and turning into egg drop soup. I drain, see, I use this little thingy called the Chinese colander to drain the liquidy white. There are two types of white in an egg. The very watery white and the jelly white. Jelly white is great, that's what we want, and the liquidy white is evil. That spreads out all over the place, so you can use it to drain and then lower this Chinese colander with eggs into your simmering water. The fresher your eggs, the more jelly white you have and the less liquid white you have. That's why people tell you that for poached eggs you want fresh eggs. That being said, if you have chickens that lay eggs, I don't think you want them scary fresh, like you want to give them a couple of days before you poach them. Now the next question is, how do you know when the white is set and the yolk is still liquid? So you touch the egg. Poached eggs are easy because they don't have a shell. You can get them out of the water, poke them gently with your finger, and getting them out of the water, that's where Chinese colander really helps too. It's a lot easier to determine that when they're out of the pot, and if they're not done enough, you lower them back into the pot. So you touch them with your finger, and when the white feels solid, but the yolk still feels soft, like a little balloon, you get your eggs out. Oh, and one more thing about poached eggs. Yes, I do use salt, and has nothing to do with coagulation. I use salt because it tastes good. I want seasoned eggs. The video for the poached eggs is in the description below. Next is scrambled eggs and omelets. So this was another insanely popular question. I got one from Jan Budini and Hunga Bunga about salting the eggs. Okay, so I'm not sure, was it Gordon Ramsay? I think it's all Gordon Ramsay's fault that somewhere he said that don't you dare salt the eggs, scrambled eggs, until they are done. I don't know what his problem is. I mean, I salt my eggs. Kenji salts his eggs. While you're mixing your eggs, salt them. You can even put them in the fridge and have them sitting there salted. It makes absolutely no sense. Salt helps proteins retain their moisture. That's why we salt chickens and pork chops ahead, so that they are moister. Why wouldn't you salt your eggs until they are done? I mean, this way they are unevenly seasoned. So absolutely, salt your eggs while you are mixing them. Don't salt them in the end. All right, and the next question was from Edgeman. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your username, but how do you make well-done scrambled eggs that still taste good? You know, I'm with you. I'm not big on this ooey gooey scrambled eggs. I don't want them dry, but I don't want them like I think you referred to them as creme fraiche pudding. So the trick there is to use a little bit of starch. I use flour. Some people use cornstarch. For cornstarch, you need less than flour because cornstarch has twice the thickening power per certain volume. That delays coagulation, so when the eggs coagulate, they stay a little bit softer and moister. And I also use either heavy cream or milk in my omelets and scrambled eggs. A little bit of flour, it produces fabulous scrambled eggs. And omelets, I do have recipes for those with all the gory detail in the description below. All right, moving right along. How to crack eggs? This is a question from Ali Maldonado Heredia. You know, yeah, everybody assumes that cracking an egg is just anybody can crack an egg. That's true, but sometimes you need to keep the yolk intact, so you need to crack it kind of nicely. So let's do it. So when it comes to cracking eggs, I really don't believe there is any right or wrong. I know some people in other countries like to use the back of the knife and tap on the egg gently like this. And then you put your thumbs in and just pull it apart. The important thing is when you put your thumbs in, not to dig inside the shell, to really try to keep your thumbs on the outside and pry it open without digging into the egg with your thumbs. Here we can do another one, the traditional American way, where I usually don't do a knife. I tap on the side of the counter, I give it a sharp little whack. I want to basically create this little indent, see, like that, and then put your thumbs in. And you can use your knuckles, these two knuckles, to help you pull apart without digging in. You know, see if my knuckles connect. There are my two eggs. All right. Now, a few questions about safety from Snihakana, Pan Plus, and Ace6251. So you guys were asking if raw eggs are dangerous. Do I make dishes with raw eggs? Yes, I do. I make dishes with raw eggs. Raw eggs are not that dangerous. I mean, living in general is dangerous. Walking is dangerous. Eating and breathing are also dangerous. So statistically, only 1 in 20,000 eggs in the United States is contaminated with salmonella, and that's an outdated number. The regulations have actually gotten stricter, so I think now this number is even lower. You know, the risk you take driving to the store to pick up your eggs is probably bigger than eating a raw egg. That being said, I do take some basic precautions. So most of the salmonella, if your egg had some, it would be on the shell, because I mean that's what's exposed to chicken poop and that's where salmonella usually is. So if I'm gonna use a raw egg in a dish, I put the egg into boiling water for about 20-30 seconds and then get it out. This way, if there was any contamination on the shell, it would kill it. Now I'm only left with what's inside the egg, and the chances of that having salmonella is actually quite low. Not that it can't happen, but it's very, very low. If you're wondering, oh, what if my white is a little undercooked? Well, look at it this way. If you have a compromised immune system, and you should not be eating anything raw. You shouldn't be eating undercooked eggs, and you shouldn't be eating a salad, and you shouldn't be eating a raw apple. So in that case, no, the egg has to be cooked completely. But if you're a normal, healthy person, there's absolutely no reason why you should worry about slightly undercooked eggs, in my opinion. You should ask your doctor and make your own decisions, but I personally don't worry about raw eggs. There was also a question about how thoroughly do you need to wash your sink if some raw egg ended up in the sink. So no, I do not sterilize my sink with bleach every time a raw egg touches it. I just rinse it with water. That being said, I never ever put any produce in my sink to wash unless I sterilize the sink. Yes, sinks are dirty, and it's not your raw egg that's the biggest culprit, especially the drained. You know, you're washing dishes in it. So, you know, if I'm just gonna wash dishes, I do not sterilize my sink. But if I'm gonna wash some lettuce in my sink, yes, I spray the whole thing with bleach, scrub it all out until it is really, really, really clean. A question about baking. When should you weigh your eggs? So yeah, like we discussed, the size on the carton is meaningless. To know how much egg you're getting, you should really weigh it. But I don't always weigh when I bake. For any doughs, for any batters, I weigh. But for custards, you know, I just wing it. For a custard, if your custard has a little bit more egg, a little bit less egg, it's still a lovely custard. It's not a biggie. If your pasta dough has a little bit more egg and a little bit less egg, that is a biggie. So weigh for doughs and batters. This was a question from a cat. How do you cook eggs in a stainless steel pan? The short answer is you don't. You get a pan that actually works for eggs. Teflon pans work. If you think Teflon is evil, nowadays you can buy a non-stick pan that is not Teflon. There are all sorts of green pans. And there's cast iron, carbon steel that's well seasoned. But if you absolutely must cook an egg in a stainless pan, here's how to do it. You basically have to give your pan a little bit of seasoning. At some point, somebody sent me a video saying that there is this very clever Chinese trick where you cook scallions in the pan first. And there's something magical about scallions that releases some special chemicals and makes your pan not stick. That's BS. Yes, scallions work, carrots work, everything works as long as it's not wet. You can cook anything in your pan first for like maybe 5-10 minutes with some fat. Just don't cook tomatoes because they're wet, but you could cook whatever you want, any vegetables or even toast in a pan for about 5-10 minutes in some form of fat. Then remove that, add a little bit more fat. Make sure you're not trying to do those eggs without fat, olive oil or butter, and then your pan will not stick as much. Of course, all that is short-lived. You have to do that every single time you cook in a stainless steel pan because stainless steel pans do not hold seasoning the way cast iron or carbon steel pans hold. Thank you so much for all your wonderful questions. Here are more cooking tutorials for you to check out, and the link to my online classes is in the description below.